picture-perfect family. A loving mother expecting her third child. Two beautiful little girls who called their daddy their hero. And one August morning in Colorado that shattered everything we thought we knew about the people living next door. This is the story of the Watts family murders. A case so shocking, so unthinkable that it left investigators, the community, and millions around the world asking the same haunting question. How could a father do this to his own family? Welcome to the Mystery Docket, where we bring you real stories of crime, mystery, and the search for justice. Today's case isn't just about what happened, it's about the warning signs that were hiding in plain sight, and the devastating consequences when love turns to something unrecognizable. Before we dive into the darkness of this case, we need to talk about who Shanann Watts really was, because she was so much more than just a victim. Shanann Catherine Rzisek was born on January 10, 1984 in New Jersey, to parents Frank and Sandra. She was a vibrant, ambitious woman who lit up every room she entered. Friends and family describe her as someone who was fiercely loving, incredibly determined, and had this infectious energy that just drew people to her. Shanann was a devoted mother to her two daughters, 4-year-old Bella and 3-year-old Celeste. She was 15 weeks pregnant with their son, who they had already named Nico. She had dreams of expanding their family, of watching her children grow up together, of building a legacy of love. She was also an entrepreneur. Shanann worked in sales and was passionate about health and wellness, always encouraging others to live their best lives. She was active on social media, sharing glimpses of her seemingly perfect family life. Dance parties in the kitchen with her girls, date nights with her husband Chris, and the excitement of planning for baby number 3. To understand what happened to this family, we need to go back to 2010, when Shanann met the man she thought would be her forever, Christopher Lee Watts. Chris and Shanann's love story seemed like something out of a romantic movie. They met in 2010 when Chris was working for Anadarko Petroleum in North Carolina. He was quiet, reserved, the kind of guy who seemed steady and dependable. Shanann was drawn to his calm demeanor, and he seemed enchanted by her vivacious personality. They married in 2012 and soon welcomed their first daughter, Bella, in 2013. Celeste followed in 2015. From the outside, they looked like they had it all. A beautiful home in Frederick, Colorado worth about $400,000, 2 adorable daughters, and what appeared to be a solid marriage. But as we know from studying family crimes, what happens behind closed doors can be dramatically different from what the world sees. Chris worked long hours in the oil fields, while Shanann managed their home and built her business. She was the more outgoing of the two, often taking the lead in social situations and making most of the family decisions. Some friends noticed that Chris seemed to fade into the background when Shanann was around, but they chalked it up to typical marriage dynamics. What they didn't see, what nobody saw, was that Chris was beginning to feel trapped. He later told investigators that he felt like he was living someone else's life, that he had lost himself somewhere along the way. But instead of communicating these feelings, instead of seeking help or honest conversation, Chris began leading a double life. In early 2018, Chris met Nicole Kessinger, a co-worker at Anadarko. What started as a professional relationship quickly turned into something else. By June 2018, they were having an affair. Chris told Nicole that his marriage was over, that he and Shanann were separating, that he was practically a single man. But that wasn't true. Shanann had no idea her marriage was falling apart. Looking back, the summer of 2018 was filled with warning signs that something was terribly wrong, signs that tragically went unrecognized until it was too late. In June 2018, Shanann discovered she was pregnant with their third child. She was overjoyed and couldn't wait to surprise Chris with the news. She planned this elaborate reveal, complete with a special shirt for him that said, "Dad of 3, and a pregnancy test tied with a bow. But Chris's reaction wasn't what she expected. Instead of excitement, there was hesitation, distance. He seemed almost disappointed. Friends and family noticed that Chris appeared withdrawn during this time, but Shanann attributed it to work stress. Around the same time, their financial situation was becoming increasingly strained. They were facing potential bankruptcy, struggling with credit card debt, and the mortgage on their dream home was becoming difficult to manage. The pressure was mounting, but instead of facing these problems together, Chris was spending more and more time at work, and with Nicole. In July 2018, Shanann took the girls to North Carolina to visit her family for several weeks. During this time, Chris's behavior became even more concerning. He was texting constantly, staying out late, and when Shanann tried to video chat with him, he seemed distant and distracted. But perhaps the most chilling red flag came in the form of Chris's internet searches during this period. Investigators would later discover that he had been researching things like, how long does it take for someone to go missing before they're declared dead? And looking up the lyrics to a Metallica song called Battery, which contains disturbing references to violence. Nicole Kessinger later told investigators that Chris had told her his divorce would be finalized by the end of August. The problem? Shanann had no idea they were getting divorced. On August 12, 2018, Shanann returned home from North Carolina with Bella and Celeste. She was excited to see Chris, hoping that some time apart might have helped their relationship. She had no way of knowing that she had just hours left to live. August 13, 2018, started like any other morning in the Watts household, but it would end in unspeakable tragedy. At 1:48 a.m., Shanann's friend and co-worker Nicole Atoft dropped her off at home after a business trip to Arizona. Ring doorbell footage captured this moment. Shanann walking up to her front door, luggage in hand, completely unaware that these would be her final steps. What happened next inside that house has been pieced together through Chris's eventual confession and the investigation that followed. According to Chris, he and Shanann got into an argument about their relationship and the affair. But what Chris initially claimed, that this was a mutual heated discussion, investigators would later determine was likely a one-sided confrontation where Shanann finally learned the devastating truth about her husband's double life. Chris told investigators that he strangled Shanann during this argument. The medical examiner would later confirm that she died by manual strangulation, and that she had fought for her life. But the horror didn't end there. Chris's own confession revealed that 4-year-old Bella witnessed her mother's murder. Both Bella and Celeste were then taken to the remote oil site where Chris worked. In a location isolated from any possibility of help or rescue, Chris took the lives of his own daughters. By 5:27 a.m., Chris was captured on security cameras at the Survey 319 oil site, his truck loaded with the bodies of his family. He buried Shanann in a shallow grave and placed Bella and Celeste's bodies in crude oil tanks. At 10 a.m., Chris returned home and began the performance of his life, playing the role of a confused, worried husband whose family had mysteriously vanished. When Nicole Atoft arrived at 12:10 p.m. for a planned business meeting and found Shanann wasn't answering her door or phone, she immediately knew something was wrong. Shanann was never unreachable, especially when it came to business commitments. Nicole called the police, and at 1:40 p.m., Officer Scott Baumhover arrived at the Watts home for what was initially treated as a welfare check. Chris met him at the door, and what happened next would be analyzed by investigators, body language experts, and millions of viewers for years to come. From the moment police arrived at the Watts home, Chris's behavior raised red flags with experienced investigators. While he appeared concerned on the surface, there were subtle signs that something wasn't right. During the welfare check, Chris seemed oddly calm for a man whose pregnant wife and 2 young daughters were missing. He claimed Shanann had taken the girls somewhere after they had a civil conversation about separating, but he couldn't explain why she hadn't taken her medication, her phone charger, or any belongings for the girls. Officer Baumhover noted in his report that Chris's demeanor was not consistent with that of a concerned husband and father. When asked to walk through the house, Chris was reluctant to let officers into certain areas, particularly the basement. As news of the missing family spread, the community rallied. Search parties formed, social media campaigns launched, and the story quickly gained national attention. But while hundreds of volunteers searched for Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, investigators were focusing their attention closer to home. Detective Tammy Lee, an experienced investigator with the Colorado Bureau of Investigation, was assigned to the case. She immediately noticed inconsistencies in Chris's story and began building a timeline of his activities. Security footage from a neighbor's house showed Chris loading his truck at 5:17 a.m. on August 13, 3 hours before he claimed to have left for work. When confronted with this evidence, Chris claimed he was loading tools, but investigators noted his body language suggested deception. Phone records revealed that Chris had been in constant contact with Nicole Kessinger, including calls that lasted hours while his family was supposedly missing. When investigators interviewed Nicole, she revealed the affair and Chris's claims that his marriage was over. But perhaps the most damning evidence came from the oil site where Chris worked. GPS data from his work truck showed he had driven to the remote Survey 319 location, the same site where investigators would later find the bodies. On August 15, 2018, after failing a polygraph test and being confronted with mounting evidence, Chris Watts confessed to killing Shanann. Initially, he tried to blame her for the girls' deaths, claiming she had strangled Bella and Celeste after he told her about the affair, and that he had killed her in a rage. But investigators knew there were still lies in his confession. The truth about what happened to Bella and Celeste would come out later, and it was far worse than anyone could have imagined. On November 6, 2018, in a Weld County courtroom, Christopher Watts stood before Judge Marcelo Kopkow and pleaded guilty to multiple counts of first-degree murder. The death penalty was taken off the table at the request of Shanann's family, who felt that no additional deaths would bring them peace. But the full horror of what Chris had done wasn't revealed until February 2019, when he finally told investigators the complete truth about his daughter's murders. In a 5-hour prison interview with investigators, Chris admitted that he had acted alone in killing all 3 family members. He revealed that Bella had witnessed Shanann's murder and had asked, "Daddy, what happened to Mommy?" before he took her and Celeste to the oil site. The details of what happened next are too disturbing to share in full, but Chris confessed that both girls were alive when he arrived at the remote location, and that Bella had even attempted to fight back, asking if the same thing that happened to her mother was going to happen to her. Chris Watts was sentenced to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 48 years for the unlawful termination of pregnancy and tampering with deceased human bodies. He is currently incarcerated at Dodge Correctional Institution in Wisconsin. The Rzusek family, Shanann's parents and brother, have shown incredible strength in the aftermath of this tragedy. They established the Shanann Watts Foundation to provide resources for families affected by domestic violence and family annihilation. Through their unimaginable pain, they continue to honor the memory of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico. Frank Rzusek, Shanann's father, delivered a powerful victim impact statement at Chris's sentencing, saying, "I trusted you to take care of them, not kill them. And they also trusted you." His words echoed the betrayal felt not just by the family, but by everyone who had watched this case unfold. The Watts family murders remain one of the most shocking cases of family annihilation in recent history, but they also serve as a tragic reminder of the warning signs that can hide behind a facade of normalcy. This case highlights the devastating reality that domestic violence doesn't always look like what we expect. There were no police reports, no obvious signs of physical abuse, no clear indicators that Chris Watts was capable of such violence. But experts now recognize that family annihilation often follows a pattern: financial stress, relationship breakdown, and a perpetrator who sees their family as possessions rather than individuals. The red flags were there: the emotional distance, the affair, the sudden personality change, the lies about separation. But they were subtle, easy to misinterpret or dismiss. If you or someone you know is experiencing relationship problems, financial stress, or notice sudden changes in a partner's behavior, please reach out for help. Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico deserved so much more than the life they were given. Their memory serves as a reminder that behind every statistic is a family destroyed, dreams shattered, and a community forever changed. Thank you for listening to this difficult but important case. The Watts family murders force us to confront uncomfortable truths about the people we think we know and the dangers that can exist in our own communities. If this case affected you, please take care of yourself. And if you believe this story deserves to be remembered, please consider subscribing to the Mystery Docket to help us continue sharing stories that matter. What aspects of this case do you think are most important for people to understand? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. Until next time, this is the Mystery Docket, reminding you that every case we cover represents real people, real families, and real loss that deserves our respect and attention. The information in this video is based on publicly available sources, court documents, and news reports. This content is for educational purposes only. The Mystery Docket is not responsible for any decisions or actions taken based on this information. Always consult with professionals for legal, medical, or safety advice.